So welcome to the program. We have Mr. Trevor Burrus on the line. Trevor is a Cato Institute scholar. He is a research fellow in the Cato Institute's Robert A. Levy Center for Constitutional Studies and the Center for the Study of Science, as well as managing editor for the Cato Supreme Court Review. His research interests include constitutional law, civil and criminal law, legal and political philosophy, legal history, and the interface between science and public policy. Please welcome Mr. Trevor Burrus. Trevor, it's great to meet you and have you on the program, sir.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to have you on. I wanted to talk a little bit about this new guidance that the federal government is giving about nonprofits. You know, the New York Times, they call it dark money, that the U.S. is easing this dark money rule. What do you know about it?
Well, it's the greatest political salesmanship that I've ever seen. Just the term dark money, the people on the left really won some rhetorical points by naming this thing that no one really knows what it is, dark money. Generally, when we're talking about dark money, we're talking about a thing called a 501c4. So at Cato, where I work, we're a 501c3. We're an educational institution. We're not allowed to talk about, advocate for political candidates or for bills to be voted on or passed. But 501c4s are a variety of nonprofit organizations that can do a lot of some political advocacy and some education. They just can't be their primary purpose, cannot be political advocacy. And different groups can give to those, different corporations can give them, people can give to them. Some people can give to them for the purpose of political advocacy. So in 2014, the Obama administration said that those organizations' IRS forms, they have to report those donors to the IRS, which the IRS was not going to make public or anything. It was just this sort of onerous, unnecessary burden on these organizations. And what happened last week was that they simply said, you don't have to do that anymore. And they're talking about 2.9% of political spending. Everyone tries to convince you that dark money, quote unquote, is a huge part of political spending. It's almost nothing. And it's just the left's continued war on political speech that it doesn't like.
I think you're exactly right. It's political speech they don't like. There's also some First Amendment applications here, right? I mean, shouldn't I have the ability to associate with who I want to associate with, and I should be able to give them money without having to report that to the government? I think that when you have to report it to the government, it makes you vulnerable for reprisals. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And on many levels, that's exactly what the left wants. They want to be able to get this information out there. And again, I want to point out the real irony of this. The organizations are required to give this information to the IRS, but the IRS was not allowed to publish it. So it's literally not taking any information away from the public unless it gets leaked by the IRS or someone gets it out of there, which has happened before. This happened with the National Organization for Marriage. They had their donors linked who were then threatened. And the real irony here from why the left is not on board with anonymous speech and anonymous association is that the main case that the right to anonymous association came out of is a case called NAACP versus Alabama from the 50s, where the state of Alabama claimed that it needed to know the names and addresses of every person who supported or was a member of the NAACP. And, of course, in 1958, the reason the state of Alabama wanted that was so they could, put burn crosses on their lawn or attack them in other ways. And the Supreme Court says you have a right to anonymous association, and now the left doesn't believe that anymore.
Wow. They don't believe it anymore, and I'm just wondering, well, first of all, let's make clear. What you said in your opening statement was that this was something that was new. And so the idea that Donald Trump is he's basically just putting things back the way it was. That we need to make that clear.
Pre-Obama,
yeah, it's pre-Obama. We need to make that clear because the left wants everybody to think that the president is some sort of tyrant. When in reality, he's restoring things like putting the census question on, or the citizenship question on the census, and he's restoring things like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have to give your donors to the IRS, especially in light of what happened with that whole Lois Lerner scam.
No, yeah, absolutely. There's just absolutely no reason, and we've seen it. The other states who are trying to shut down political spending, left-wing states, and of course they're not trying to generally shut down left-wing states.
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
I see where Gene asks on Facebook right now, is it Friday yet? No, Gene, it's not Friday, it's Monday. I know everybody out there driving to work right now probably wishes it was Friday, but it's time to roll up our sleeves and start the week. Thank you for starting the beginning of your week with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. My name is Paul. The phone number, if you want to call or text, contribute to the program, 870-275-9799. You can also sound off in the comments section at facebook.com/Conduit News. Really appreciate everybody out there listening. We got a good news day for you, well, a good show for you, rather. We're going to go over some news and some national headlines. President Donald Trump, what he's saying to drive the left insane. Really, it's the reactions or the results of his policies that are now going to really start to drive the left insane. Talk about that here in just a moment. There's a 2.2 pay increase that's been approved for North Little Rock City Council workers, city councilmen. The raises cover the mayor there in North Little Rock, Joe Smith, city attorney, city clerk, city council members, full-time salaried employees. I'll tell you why that's not going over so well with some people who are, I don't know, monitoring recent tax increases. Also, we'll talk about the plant board and the fact that the governor appears to have gotten the person he wants at the helm of the Arkansas State Plant Board. We covered this last week, and we did report that it appeared that it was going to be Butch Calhoun. That has now been the case. Plant Board has approved the new Plant Board director. Reports say that Asa Hutchinson approached him 14 days before the sudden retirement of Terry Walker, the former Plant Board member. We'll tell you about that and probably some more. We have a headline here back on the 28th. We have the U.S. Attorney who is officially taking the oath of office in Arkansas, Dwayne Dak Keese. I'll tell you why. I certainly was watching this story because of the growing Arkansas corruption scandals that we're seeing in the headlines every single day. Secretary of State Mark Martin has objected to a satanic temple and them being added to the lawsuit concerning the Ten Commandments on the Capitol grounds. That's very interesting. That's a very interesting story. We're now told, because of the Arkansas Ethics Commission ruling, we're now told that if you are a woman and you have kids and you want young kids and you want to run for office, that you can use campaign funds to pay for child care. That's in the news. Also, we've, of course, got the task force on taxes meeting. They're getting updates about how much more money the state's going to get from the internet sales tax possibilities out there now that the Supreme Court has ruled that the sovereign state of Arkansas can tax a citizen in the sovereign state of wherever. Interestingly enough, we're still waiting on the carbon tax that will be implemented or put on Arkansans when California doesn't like our coal-powered power plants. At the bottom of the second hour at 7:33, we're going to be talking with Maria Espinoza. She is the national director of the Remembrance Project. This story caught my eye last week when Governor Cuomo of New York pardoned 7 ex-criminal immigrants, illegal immigrants. This was about, 5 days ago? Well, okay, so there's this there's this project called the Remembrance Project. Maria Espinoza, she's the director there, the national director of the Remembrance Project, which honors and remembers Americans and legal residents who have been killed by illegal aliens. We're going to talk to her a little bit about that, as well as, and this really kind of dovetails into our first topic, which has to do with whether or not Donald Trump's actually going to build the wall, whether or not he's going to shut down the government to do so. You know, he said during that terrible spending bill that by many fiscal conservative standards was, was criticized. They said, we can't believe that you did this, that you voted this way. And Donald Trump said, and I think he did it to get the military spending. I think he needed the military spending. I think that's why he did it. But he said, I'm never going to do this again, and I'm going to get my border wall funding next time, and you're going to give it to me. We'll wait and see, but it looks like the president is saying, we'll get to that story here in just a minute, but let's start, excuse me, I can't talk this morning, you have to forgive me. Let's start this morning with the news that came out on Friday, shortly after we got off the program. The United States economy, the GDP, the gross domestic product, in the second quarter was at 4.1%, something that economists, when Donald Trump said he would have 4% growth or over 4% or even 5%, economists basically universally panned it, made fun of it. I saw a great mashup of that. That's fantastic. It reminded me of the election night mashups. Donald Trump can never win. Donald Trump can never win. And then you can just see the color drain from their face as they realize he's going to win the presidency. Here's President Donald Trump on Friday as the numbers came in.
Good morning. Moments ago, the numbers for America's economic growth, or GDP, were just released. And I am thrilled to announce that in the second quarter of this year, the United States economy grew at the amazing rate of 4.1%. We're on track to hit the highest annual average growth rate in over 13 years. And I will say this right now, and I'll say it strongly, as the trade deals come in one by one, we're going to go a lot higher than these numbers, and these are great numbers. During each of the two previous administrations, we averaged just over 1.8% GDP growth. By contrast, we are now on track to hit an average GDP annual growth of over 3%, and it could be substantially over 3%. Each point, by the way, means approximately $3 trillion and 10 million jobs. Think of that. Each point, you go up 1 point. It doesn't sound like much. It's a lot. It's $3 trillion, and it's 10 million jobs. If economic growth continues at this pace, the United States economy will double in size more than 10 years faster than it would have under either President Bush or President Obama. Perhaps one of the biggest wins in the report, and it is indeed a big one, is that the trade deficit, very dear to my heart because we've been ripped off by the world, has dropped by more than $50 billion. $52 billion to be exact. It's dropped by more than 50. Think of that. The trade deficit has dropped by more than $50 billion. And that's added and adding 1 point to GDP. That's a tremendous drop. We haven't had a drop like that in a long time. You have to go back a long time before you find it. By increasing growth to 3% over the next 10 years, that would mean 12 million new American jobs and $10 trillion of new American wealth, at least. And that's not including the fact that since I was elected,
over the weekend, for the most part, the mainstream media, they're not going to give Donald Trump credit for anything, obviously. I had a question, though. You know, I have uniformly, because I know the stock market is up really high, but I also know that the attitude of mainstream small business owners is pretty optimistic as well. We have people, I mean, when Donald Trump won, I was getting phone calls of people saying, well, now that Trump's won, I want to invest in my business a little bit, see if I can grow this thing. If Hillary had won, we would have basically, boarded up, shut down, built a bunker somewhere and tried to, wait out the storm, I guess. My question is this, because I have criticized the stock market for a long time in the context of it doesn't seem to be based on sound economic, the fundamentals of capitalism a lot of times. Now, not all the time, but my biggest criticism has been, it seems like it's more of a psychological component. Let's try to convince the potential investor that our product or service or business or whatever, our company is worth X, when it's really not worth that. And I think you're seeing some of that being unmasked with Twitter, with Facebook, with their stocks plummeting the way they are. I think people are realizing, hang on, this is not really as valuable as we've been led to believe, that sort of thing. So instead of, I guess the biggest critique would be, instead of delivering the product or service better, more efficiently, and seeing the company grow, it's now shifted from that to trying to convince somebody that you're worth whatever you want to be worth, instead of actually, really focusing on the product or the service that your company is, in the business of or whatever. That's been my criticism for a long time. But I do know the stock market, is doing well, and you obviously have people's 401ks and everything else that's doing well. So how much of this economy is obviously the stock market, but also how much of it is the small business owner, the backbone? This is why we do the small business spotlights on the program. The backbone of this economy are your small businesses. And it's the voluntary cooperation among free men. It's the products and services that these small businesses are delivering. And I got to tell you, I think it's real, actual economic growth that you're seeing here. 4.1%. Economists said that it would never happen. And the numbers don't lie. Now, this is going to send the left into more of a tailspin. They're going to talk more about Michael Cohen and Russia. You can certainly take that to the bank. This headline here, though, the one sector of the economy that I don't think anybody predicted was going to go through the roof because of President Donald Trump, and that's psychology. That's right, therapists. This headline from the Daily Caller's Kyle Perisic. Therapists are seeing patients with Trump derangement syndrome. It's an actual thing. This one therapist calls it Trump anxiety disorder. This is fantastic. I mean, this is really pathetic, actually. I mean, it's funny to me. I mean, listen, when Barack Obama was elected and his policies, I'm not going to lie. There were times I thought it was the end of the world, but I didn't have to go to therapy because of it. And apparently most of the therapists are, guess what? They're busy around Washington, D.C. They're noticing a sharp increase in patients describing symptoms of what has been called Trump derangement syndrome. When Judge Jeanine Pirro was on The View and she said that Whoopi Goldberg had Trump derangement syndrome. And to disprove Judge Jeanine, Whoopi Goldberg then had a complete psychological meltdown on national television. Quote, "There is a fear of the world ending," said D.C. Counseling and Psychotherapy Center founder Elizabeth Lamont, referring to some of President Donald Trump's decisions. Quote, "It's very disorienting and constantly unsettling." Now, why is it constantly unsettling? Why is it constantly unsettling? Does the media have any role to play here? Are they at blame at all here? Of course they are. One of the main reasons so many people, if you have any friends who are leftists, the reason they're having such a hard time is because of the sources, the media sources they were getting their news for 18 months before the presidential election of 2016. They were told that there's no way Donald Trump can win. And they were told that Hillary Clinton is fantastic and she's never done anything wrong. But they were mainly told all of these poll numbers that turned out to be bogus. They were told that Donald Trump, the media gave Donald Trump all of this press coverage, but they were like, this is just a joke. This is the end of the Republican Party. It's never going to happen. So they were basically told, don't worry, this is great. Aren't we having a good time? This is all about the pre-party, the pre-celebration to the coronation of Hillary Clinton as the glass ceiling shattering president. And then it didn't happen. And that sent people, I mean, and this really just shows you the differences, in my opinion, a lot of times between conservatives and liberals in the modern day sense. It's all about where you put your value. It's all about self-reliance versus dependence. I mean, not only does the left, you might have leftists and Democrats who are not dependent on the government for their sustenance in terms of welfare, but they're certainly dependent on the government to apparently be able to go about their lives without a psychological meltdown because they've got somebody in office that they perceive as somebody they can't trust, and so they can't go on with their lives. It's quite fascinating. It's a fascinating phenomenon. But, I mean, conservatives put up with this for 8 years. We had somebody that we didn't trust in the White House, and guess what? The conservatives said, I'll just work an extra 10 hours this week, make up for these tax increases and all this millionaire and billionaire not paying their fair share of talk. There's a stark difference between the left and the right when it comes to that. They're two different mentalities. We as human beings, just let's be honest, let's drop the labels conservative or liberal. We as human beings want somebody to tell us everything's going to be okay. We as human beings want somebody to tell us not only will the government take care of everybody and solve everybody's problem, but it'll also stop you from dying. We as human beings desperately crave that kind of message. Guess what? There's no human on this earth that can do that. No human anymore. Currently, as things currently stand, Joe is telling me all of this. My point is, it really kind of does show you what we desperately crave. We just want somebody to tell us everything's going to be all right, and that's not what this life is right now. That's not what this world is. The left wants to think that man evolves and gets better and better and better and better and better. Our founding fathers and people on the right tend to think, no, we're pretty much slaves to our human nature, so we better just make a government that counts on man using power to try to, pull one over or, use the... My point is, there is a difference in the left and the right here, and you can kind of see it with things like therapists are seeing patients with Trump derangement syndrome. Really? And it's all around the swamp. It's all around D.C., I hope people will just start to turn off CNN and, or if anything, just do your own research. But then again, if you've got these articles that are cloaked as objective, I at least tell you I'm a limited government conservative, so you don't have to wonder. We got to take a break. Happy Monday. Back in a minute.
They're really going after right-wing groups. But other states have tried to use this. When Kamala Harris was the Attorney General, who's now Senator, but when she was the Attorney General of California, she wanted to get that information from the IRS, and so every organization that was raising money in her state had to give that information to her. And we have seen with Americans for Prosperity in California, they had some of that information leaked, and they had their donors absolutely threatened. And they were able to win a case in court because they were able to show that they're actual threats, which is kind of the standard now, which I don't really like. I don't think you should have to show actual threats to try and keep yourself anonymous. But it going with that NAACP versus Alabama case, the court had said, well, you show actual threats to you have a right to anonymous speech. But really, here's a bigger question. What is the most famous anonymous speech in the history of America? It's the Federalist Papers. They were published anonymously because it's a rich tradition almost.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, Why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Trump derangement syndrome, real thing. Just talking about these therapists in D.C. seeing an uptick in people who just can't handle it. Just can't handle the truth is what you can't handle. Donald Trump is now saying that he will shut down the government over wall funding and catch and release. This is one story from Breitbart, John Binder. President Trump says he will shut down the government if Republicans and Democrats in Congress do not deliver border wall funding and an end to catch and release loophole system in their latest funding bill. Can you imagine if Donald Trump, if he does actually get to build this thing? I mean, I will tell you from my standpoint, as I watched in the primaries in 2016, I totally underestimated the pulse, if you will, of the people when it comes to this concept of illegal immigration and our sovereignty being violated constantly. Now, I talked about illegal immigration for a long time, but more along the lines of how violent the southern border is. And it really upsets me, and it has for a very long time, when you think about America we're supposed to be number one, right? But we put up signs. We put up signs on highways close to the border telling our own citizens that we can't guarantee their safety if they go down this road, so they might want to take the northern route instead of the southern route. That is unacceptable. That shows that there is some level of there is a complicit nature in the policies, our immigration policies. We are just accepting, we are ceding that, hey, you know what? These gangs down there, they're going to be violent. We're just going to have to put up with the vans that we find that are filled with torsos. No arms, legs, or heads, just torsos. We just got to put up with that. That's just part of. No. I'm sorry. No. So, yeah, build the wall, get your funding. I think his poll numbers would go through the roof if he shut the government down over wall funding. And I think the left and the media knows it. If the Democrats knew what was good for them, they'd give him the funding, because his poll numbers are going to go higher. You know, they're going to go higher if he gets the funding than if they build the wall. But if he shuts down the government over it, you wait and see. Of course, I'm not the best at predicting these things. And then you have a Daily Caller article essentially saying the same thing about this story here. Trump vows the government shut down to force funding for border wall. His Twitter reads like this: I would be willing to shut down government if the Democrats do not give us the votes for border security, which includes the wall. Must get rid of lottery, catch and release, and finally go to a system of immigration based on merit. I think Senator Tom Cotton would agree with that. Merit.
They're really going after right-wing groups. But other states have tried to use this. When Kamala Harris was in Attorney General, who's now Senator, but when she was the Attorney General of California, she wanted to get that information from the IRS, and so every organization that was raising money in her state had to give that information to her. And we have seen with Americans for Prosperity in California, they had some of that information leaked, and they had their donors absolutely threatened. And they were able to win a case in court because they were able to show that they're actual threats, which is kind of the standard now, which I don't really like. I don't think you should have to show actual threats or try and keep yourself anonymous. But it going with that NAACP versus Alabama case, the court had said, well, you show actual threats, so you have a right to anonymous speech. But really, here's a bigger question. What is the most famous anonymous speech in the history of America? It's the Federalist Papers. They were published anonymously because it's a rich tradition. Almost all the framers wrote anonymously and associated anonymously. No one wanted to know who was signing the Declaration of Independence. They were giving away their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. So it's an American tradition. And really just, the left doesn't like political speech in a variety of contexts unless it's controlled and adequately shame people. We see that, for example, with the Mozilla guy. If he gives money to an anti-gay marriage campaign, he's going to get shamed and fired. And I always just ask on the left, just put this around, put the shoe on the other foot. You know, if your views were ones that were unacceptable in your area, if you're pro-choice in the South, do you want people being able to publish that you're pro-choice in the South and having all your neighbors hate you and all this stuff? They just never ever think about the shoe on the other foot question that is essential to First Amendment doctrine.
I'm seeing kind of in my mind as you're talking, we're talking with Trevor Burrus, a Cato Institute scholar, kind of a linear line of progression here. And it's kind of just dawning on me for the first time. And we have had some politicians here in Arkansas call for the disclosure of donors when when these groups across the state maybe come out with scorecards that they don't like, and that sort of thing. And it really, I've never thought that dark money and this whole dark money, you know, you heard it from when the Citizens United case and everything else, and this phrase that they use. Fast forward, if you take the concept of dark money as they interpret it and you equate it with trying to silence opposition and not have a legitimate debate, you can really fill in the gap of what's happened. And now we get to Berkeley. Now we get to, okay, we have a conservative speaker or Ben Shapiro or whoever coming to speak on our college campus, and we'll just burn the college campus down because we don't even want to hear it. We don't want to debate. And so when you advocate against the First Amendment, freedom of association, I really like what you're saying here, Trevor. You're essentially equating it to you are trying to silence opposition and not have a debate.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
The city of North Little Rock has recently approved a 2.2% increase in the pay. This has to do with city workers. I'm sure the people who work for the city of North Little Rock are very excited about it. City workers and elected officials. But see, the elected officials part, that's the stickler, right? 2.2% pay increases. This is going to start August the 11th, and these raises were approved on Monday by the North Little Rock City Council. The raises are going to cost the city $299,861, and it covers the mayor, Joe Smith, the city attorney, Amy Fields, is according to the Gazette's Jake Sandlin, city clerk treasurer Diane Whitby, the city council members, full-time salaried employees, fire department employees, grade step non-uniformed employees, and the police chief, Mike Davis. So, again, if you're against these raises, right, then the knee-jerk reaction is going to be, well, you're against firemen. You're against police officers. No, it's the optics that don't look very good. Matter of fact, some people, like City Council member Charlie Height, who voted against the resolution that included the pay increase for council members, he said he felt uncomfortable about it, that he had friends who had complained about to him that morning this idea of giving government officials more money Councilmember Linda Robinson gave a long pause before she voted yes. Council members are paid $10,821 annually and receive a monthly $250 vehicle allowance. The 3 full-time elected officials' current salaries are Smith at $122,000, Fields $103,000, and Whitby at $72,000. Listen to what Councilman Haidt said, though. I'm not opposed to salary increases for elected officials. I'm uncomfortable for raises for city council members, including myself. I want to say that he thinks we're sending the wrong message. We're getting salary increases because of all this increased revenue. Makes me feel uncomfortable. I'll be voting no, not on the whole thing, but for half of it. Now, the reason this is a big deal is because recently they increase the sales tax. I mean, does anybody in North Little Rock remember this? The 1% city sales tax was approved by voters in August. Hyde said he thought the pay increase comes at a bad time, citing the added 1% city sales tax North Little Rock voters approved in August, an adjustment to city electric rates, and 0.5 percentage point increase in the city's lodging tax, all raising more revenue to the city. What do the elected officials do? They give themselves a cut of it. Good job. Good job, voters. You guys voted us more money, and we're going to reward ourselves with a little. That's a lot of people. Now, hear me out. Maybe a lot of people find that perfectly fine. I think most people think that this is ridiculous. This is a microcosm. I don't mean to harp on North Little Rock, but this is a microcosm of government in action. This is what they do. We saw it at the state level. I mean, good grief. Senator John Woods, convicted Senator John Woods, who perpetrated a fraud on the entire state with a phony ethics amendment that actually got rid of term limits as we knew them and increased the amount of time they could stay down there, as well as finagled a way for legislators to appoint a, quote, independent, end quote, commission that's not independent because they're appointed by legislators, and the commission decides whether or not to pay legislators more money. Wouldn't you know it? They've decided multiple times that the legislators need to have a pay increase. Huh. This is exactly the type of stuff the government does, and it's this type of stuff that even at the local level, it just makes people uneasy. It makes people uneasy. I mean, this is not how things work. This is not how things work when it comes to people who don't work for the government. This isn't how things work in the real world. And I know that is disparaging, and there are great government employees out there. There are people that work hard for the government. Matter of fact, we've had some listen to this show. They call in, and they actually will, give us inside information about what's really going on, and we appreciate that. And we appreciate what you guys are doing, trying to do right by the taxpayer. I'm just saying from the standpoint of those of us who are in the private sector, people who are going to work that are not getting that guaranteed, the government doesn't really have a customer. And that's why. That's why it's not the real world, is that government doesn't have a customer. The government has the force of law. The force of law, eventually, you get to the point of a gun. And that's what the government has. And when it comes to taking your tax revenue, okay, they're taking it regardless of whether or not they do good things with it, do bad things with it, manage it properly. They're going to come back for it every single year. Every time you make your purchase, they're getting money off of that or whatever. They don't really have a customer. And so that's why when you have these government, tax increases and then raises and that sort of thing, they think this is just the way things are supposed to go. When I say that they're not in the real world, that's what I mean. You're not in the real world because you guys exist pretty much. I mean, first of all, let me just say this. The economy has to take a giant downturn before the government ever starts to feel anything. But there are private businesses that have to actually deal with downturns as they happen. and manage their resources accordingly. Anyway, let me know what you think about that. 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Or Facebook.com/Conduit News. Stephen Steed, this happened over the weekend. The plant board okayed the hire of ex-official to direct state agricultural panel. Now, I told you this story last week, that Terry Walker was called to the Capitol for a meeting, and then the next day announced early retirement from the head of the plant board. This was as the governor was at the Farm Bureau conference up in northwest Arkansas delivering his plan on how to reform the Department of Agriculture, including the plant board. He was adamant that nothing was going to change. He had 5 bullet points, I think, and in 3 of them, nothing is going to change in this, nothing is going to change in that. It's like, well, then why do we need your plan? It's very strange that the governor is going around telling Farm Bureau that he has a new plan, but nothing's going to change for them. It just makes you think, considering it was the Farm Bureau that directly opposed 2 times what the governor has tried to do with the Department of Ag, specifically the Plant Board and the other agricultural commissions. The governor decided to go with Butch Calhoun. I'm told Butch Calhoun, first of all, he's a former state agricultural secretary. He was appointed by Democrat Governor Mike Beebe, but I'm told that Butch Calhoun is got a good relationship with the Farm Bureau. The optics of this are pretty easy if you know what's going on here. Asa has to have the Farm Bureau in order to get what he wants. It's the Farm Bureau as well as, other members of the ag community who have been outspoken of him trying. For some reason, there's a huge problem in agriculture. I don't know what it is, but there's apparently a big problem in agriculture. No one's articulated it yet. There has to be some sort of reform of the plant board. Look, and I know people don't like the plant board. Some people don't like the plant board because it's a regulatory agency. But I tell you this much I know about the plant board. They are independent of Asa Hutchinson. Because I guarantee you Asa Hutchinson did not want a ban on dicamba. You know who else didn't want a ban on dicamba? Monsanto. They did not want a ban on dicamba. The plant board, though, decided to put a temporary ban on dicamba. That is what this is about. That is the story. The mainstream media needs to be writing about that. This has to do with dicamba. It has to do with an inner power struggle. The fact that Arkansas, there needs to be stories. The mainstream media needs to write stories about how Arkansas's plant board is unlike any other plant board in other states, how this is the one thing where we're different, how we were able to resist Monsanto allowing this product and then going around and going to sell the cure with the dicamba-resistant seed after everybody's crops start to die. Well, I've got the cure. But there was an independent plant board that I am sure has come up with regulations before that don't make any sense, just like any other regulatory board has, because nobody's perfect. But in this instance, I have been watching Governor Asa Hutchinson the entire time he's been governor, and any attempt to consolidate power in the executive branch, I think, must be opposed by reasonable people. Because there has been too much of it already, and I mean, for goodness sakes, folks, I mean, the head of the Senate, the head of the Arkansas Senate, Senator Jim Hendren, is the governor's nephew. I saw a tweet the other day. They were Senator Hendren was flying a plane, and in the background you can see Governor Hutchinson in the plane. And yet you've heard, quotes in the newspaper, well, I don't talk to the governor that much. You're flying him around in a plane. I saw the tweet. It's a photo right there. All I'm saying is we talk about consolidating power into the executive branch. The people are not as well off as they should be when you have a legislative branch that is essentially at least one half of the legislative branch, essentially has been absorbed as a state agency by the governor because it's a consolidation of power. That's what it is. It is a consolidation of power. So to the plant board situation and to the fact that Monsanto didn't get what they want, Monsanto's a giant corporation. They're a giant ag corporation. You think they get told no very often? If they do get told no, they're coming after you, and that's what this is. That's what this is. I mean, the fact that Terry Walker announced his retirement Tuesday morning during a brief meeting with plant board staff, he said later that nothing specific led to his decision. Boy, I'd like to interview this guy. Nothing specific led to your decision. Well, was there a meeting like I was told? Sources told Conduit News there was a meeting at the Capitol as the governor was going to Northwest Arkansas to talk to Farm Bureau. I compared it to like the end of The Godfather, you know. And then you suddenly announce your retirement. And listen, like, you know, Terry Walker, who's 70, his replacement, Butch Calhoun, is 67. He said that Hutchinson approached him 10 to 14 days ago about the job. 10 to 14 days before Terry Walker knew, you know, he had gotten his marching orders. Hey, you're going to go and you're going to retire. You know, it's interesting. Listen to some of the quotes here. Hutchinson has proposed a reorganization of the department and plant board, which has had 101 years to build a constituency with generations of farmers. A reorganization effort in 2017 failed in the General Assembly after the Arkansas Farm Bureau opposed it. The plant board didn't like a lot of what was in the bill, Calhoun said, and I don't think the part they didn't like is going to be in the new effort. So right now we have the head of the plant board saying, you've replaced Terry Walker, a guy who didn't support what you wanted to do, Asa. Now you got Butch Calhoun, and he apparently already supports. What a coincidence. He supports the exact policy that you want to put into place. Who actually decided? Was it Asa or was it the plant board? Was it both of them? Yeah. I think so. Yeah, it says it right here. After a 40-minute executive session closed to the public because it was a personal matter, voted unanimously to recommend Calhoun and set an August 13th date for him to start. The governor's office announced Hutchinson's approval a couple of hours later. There we go. So, anyway, no other candidate was considered. We know how things are going here. You know, it is what it is. I am just going to cover the story, but from my observation post, it has everything to do with Monsanto. But I could be wrong. Maybe this is just totally fine. There's nothing to see here. Question. I wonder how Butch Calhoun feels about dicamba. Has anybody asked him about that? Huh. The telephone number is 870-275-9799. This is Conduit News Radio. Good morning to you. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week this Monday with us. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Coming up next on the program, we want to talk a little bit about the United States Attorney, Dak Keese, has been sworn in. This happened back on July 28th. We'll talk about that. Arkansas's district attorney. The Secretary of State, Mark Martin, has objected to the Satanic Temple's role in a lawsuit, calls the group a front. They certainly are. Also now, according to the Arkansas Ethics Commission, if you are a female, and I think this will extend to males too, but if you are a female running, or if you're a particular female running, and you want to be a state rep or whatever, state senator, that you can now use campaign funds to pay for child care. What do you think about that? Also, the state is predicted to reap $35 million in taxes, according to a panel That's what they were told. The tax force was told that. And coming up at the bottom of the next hour, we'll be talking with an immigration expert, Maria Espinoza. She's the national director of the Remembrance Project, which honors and remembers Americans and legal residents who have been killed by illegal aliens. We'll talk to her about that. I'm sure she'll have a few things to say about whether or not Trump should shut down the government to get his border wall funding. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to TripleRPawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's TripleRPawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, TripleRPawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Which is what we have always embraced here in America, is let's have a debate about the issues.
Yeah, and the number one rule when it comes to First Amendment is that when a politician is trying to shut down political speech, should be very concerned about the politician's interests in this. And it's one of the ironies, we had Harry Reid when he was still in the Senate, going out of the floor of the Senate many, many times and complaining about the Koch brothers, which it's just, I was like, where did all the cynicism go? This guy whose job is to run for office, and if he's a public figure, people can criticize him. He gets on the floor of the U.S. Senate, which is sort of a platform he has, to broadcast on Senate, and complains about people criticizing him. And I feel like as Americans, we should be like, any politician, no matter what the party, if they come out and they say, I'm really going to complain about this group that's criticizing me because it should be illegal to make fun of me, or which at some points we have had laws like that, like the Sedition Act. So politicians, they're
determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
To me, very important to everybody. We had unnecessary regulations that were hurting our economy and hurting our country. We have eliminated a record number of job-killing regulations. And with the help of Republicans in Congress, we passed, without one Democrat vote, the biggest tax cuts and reform in our history. And as you know, the Democrats want to end that and raise everybody's taxes. That will be a disaster for our economy. As a result, more than 6 million Americans are now enjoying new bonuses, better jobs, and far bigger paychecks. Yet every single Democrat voted against the tax cuts, every single one. We didn't get one vote. They voted against working families. They voted against small businesses. Not good. In the first 3 months after tax cuts, over $300 billion poured back into the United States from overseas. We think it's going to be, in the end, when completed, over $4 trillion will be back into our country. Apple alone is bringing in $230 billion, and they're building new plants. They're building a magnificent campus. They're going to be spending their money very wisely, but they're spending it in our country, not in some other country. That was made possible by the new tax cut and reform plan. At the same time, we are finally cracking down on decades of abusive foreign trade practice. We were abused by companies. We were abused by the companies within countries. But in particular, we were abused by countries themselves, including allies. Abused like no nation has ever been abused on trade before, because we had nobody watching. They stole our jobs, and they plundered our wealth. But that ended. Yesterday, I was at Granite City Steel in Illinois. It was an incredible sight. We had an audience of steel workers.
All right, stop.
Some of the roughest, toughest.
That's President Donald Trump on Friday. Just wanted to let you hear what he had to say on trade. You know, in conservative circles, there certainly is a divide on this trade situation, these trade policies between the president. Now, actually, some people in those circles will be like, "What do you mean? There's no divide. If you're a true conservative, you're not gonna be for any of these tariffs or anything else." And I certainly understand that. I will say though that so far, it seems, and I've had Congressman Rick Crawford on, and I'm going to use his term. He's used it a couple times on the program. Economic saber rattling. It seems like some of this stuff, and I know there's actual tariffs that have been placed, but there's also, you know, you put the tariff on China, and then they come off their tariff on American cars, things like that. Then you have the EU guy coming over, Jacques. He comes over and he's, it was Jean-Claude, sorry. And he essentially says, no, we're gonna work this out. It seems like it really, truly is a negotiation more than anything. I mean, I know you have the tariffs on steel and aluminum and everything else, and it's certainly making things difficult. But I would also refer you to Conduit co-founder Joe Maynard when we interviewed him on this program about the concept, him being in manufacturing, aircraft manufacturing, things like that. Him talking about the concept with the steel, though, is more of a national security issue. If we're talking about we have to have materials, resources to build our planes, we need to be doing that all within the confines of our borders. You know what I'm saying? We don't need to be dependent on anybody outside of our borders when it comes to building aircraft, aluminum, steel, tanks, whatever the case may be. And I think that's really powerful stuff. And by the way, you can go to the YouTube page and you can check that interview out. We did that a couple of weeks ago. So it's fascinating. Not to mention, I would also, if you really want to know, some more about what's going on, you need to check out the interview we did a couple of weeks ago with Congressman Rick Crawford, when he gave a salute to Arkansas farmers, which was really, really good, really powerful interview, and his perspective is really interesting, knowledgeable for him to tell us about what's going on with some of this economic saber-rattling, if you will, and the tariffs. But certainly all of this stuff. Now, the media is not going to tell you any of the successes of this president. They're not going to tell you that Saudi Arabia recognized Israel's right to exist. They're not going to tell you that, or make a big deal, that Kim Jong-un fulfilled one of his promises on the road to denuclearize North Korea by sending Americans fallen from the Korean War back home. They're not going to tell you any of that. But the therapy bills will continue to go up, as therapists see people in D.C. for Trump derangement syndrome and treatment. Let's hope as the therapists go up, so does that GDP. Just keeps going up. One more hour coming your way next.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Biggest interest is in controlling their own message and shutting down people who are going to criticize them or calling them out in some way by labeling them dark money. The only way to have a really robust First Amendment and political debate in this country is to have participation be free and open, and if you want it to be, anonymous, and have those rules apply to everyone at all times. Left-wing people can anonymously give to the Communist Party. Guess who was really into outing anonymous speech in the 50s? Republicans. They wanted to get all the people who were communists, and they wanted to make sure that their political giving was known. And so the shoe can always be on the other foot. And the only way to have this robust political debate again is to mistrust any politician who decides they're going to shut down or expose speech in the name of, quote, public good.
On your on the website here over at cato.org/research/campaign finance, it says this: by undermining competitive elections, campaign finance laws undermine democracy. Campaign finance reform distracts us from the real issue, the ultimate source of potential corruption, ubiquitous government. Government today fosters corruption because it exercises vast powers over virtually every aspect of life. It is any wonder that special interest, indeed, every interest but the general, should be trying either to take advantage of that or protect themselves from it. Can you expand on that a little bit, Trevor?
Yeah, so the problem with campaign finance, most campaign finance laws we have in this country didn't really exist until the mid-'70s. We had some other ones, some regulations on corporate giving, but not until the mid-'70s. And this was a very post-Watergate thing where they were worried about the cleanliness of government, and so they were worried about who was spending. And then we had a case. The ACLU was one of the plaintiffs saying that these restrictions on money are restrictions on speech. And that was the first thing where, going back to the skepticism about politicians, where you have this huge government which has a ton of favors and contracts and everything to give out. So one of the best ways of getting money out of politics is trying to get politics out of business and politics out of money. But if it's going to be involved in those things, you're going to see money flowing around, which is not necessarily a good thing. The hardest thing to convey to people when you're talking about campaign finance is many people just seem to think that giving money to a candidate or giving money to a political cause you believe in or spending it for your own speech is some sort of per se wrong. And that's not true at all. It takes money to publish, say, common sense, Thomas Paine's Common Sense, to try and change people's minds, to try and change the conversation. And you don't want that money to be controlled by politicians and have them decide who's allowed to speak because they have their own vested interest. And that's what we saw in the first campaign finance laws, is that if you have self-interested politicians who are complaining about people criticizing them, they can't just pass a law that says you're not allowed to criticize me. I mean, they're smart enough to know that that would obviously violate the First Amendment. But they can pass a law that says you can't spend money or give money to an organization that comments on or supports a candidate within 30 days of an election. And that will support them. That will help them out. It will help out incumbents the most. Incumbents are, if you restrict campaign spending, incumbents are the most helped out. And here's exactly why. If you wanted to run for office tomorrow, or one of your listeners wanted to run for office tomorrow, and I'm not sure which the congressman is down there, but the congressman has name recognition, and the listener right now has no name recognition. So it's kind of like trying to start a business when the established business is in place. So what do you need when you start a business? You need startup money. You need people out there to give you $100,000 to get your campaign going so people can know your name, and whereas the person you're challenging already has that startup money. So if you restrict the spending, if you say, hey, I'm going to put a regulation on both me as the incumbent and the challenger to my position, and we can't raise more than $2,700 at a time, well, that's going to hurt the challenger more. And that's what we've seen since campaign finance laws came in. We've seen in many ways on the floor of the Senate, you have senators having said this, for the purpose why I'm passing this law is to shut down speech that's critical of me. And then we see an extremely high retention rate of incumbents. It's almost impossible to get an incumbent out of office. And if you really want to talk about what corruption is, it's government in this town, the swamp that never, ever gets drained because it's almost impossible to raise enough money to get someone out of office.
Wow. Yeah. I really, really appreciate those points, and I hadn't thought of that. I've talked about the power of incumbency before, but never in the context of the campaign finance laws and the limits on giving. But you're exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of businesses or successful business owners who see what's going on in Congress, and they might want to finance one of those and give a big lump sum, but.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. It's hour number 2 and the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. You have found it. Feel free to sound off on Facebook, facebook.com/Conduit News. We'll be talking with immigration expert Maria Espinoza, the national director of the Remembrance Project, which honors individuals, remembers Americans and legal residents who have been killed by illegal aliens. But you can't even say that word anymore, right? Illegal aliens, it's a word that is a no-no. We're talking to her about that. Really specifically, I want to talk to her about, I saw where Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, was just, pardoned some criminals who are illegal aliens about 5 days ago. That's interesting. Hey, folks, if you are in the central Arkansas area, specifically Faulkner County, I'm going to be speaking at the Faulkner County Tea Party Lunch this coming Thursday. That's August the 2nd. It's at Larry's Pizza. I'll be there from 12 to 1. And I'm told, I see Janet on Facebook writing that the discussion will be lively and very informative on Arkansas politics and issues. So anyway, I'd love to see you there. If you don't know anything about the Faulkner County Tea Party, this would be a good time to find out about that. But if you've never been before, it's a great time. But I'd also just love to meet you. If you're a listener of the program, I'd love for you to come out. I'd love to meet you. Love to see you there. It's going to be at 12 o'clock, Larry's Pizza in Conway, and that is this coming Thursday, August the 2nd. Can you believe it's the beginning of August already? That is crazy. What's the 10th? Your 2-year anniversary? No, that's the 8th. On August the 8th, Joe will have been working behind the glass here for 2 years. It's pretty cool, man. Wild ride. Yeah, it has. It has. Okay, let's talk about this. The United States Attorney, Dak Keese, took the oath of office last week. The governor was there. Senator John Bozeman was there, attended the ceremony. His full name is Dwayne Dak Keese. By the way, speaking of Dak, did anybody see that Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys is basically, saying that kneeling during the national anthem there's no place for kneeling during the national anthem because it sucks the joy out of football. I tell you, if you weren't a Cowboys fan, you certainly have got to be one. I mean, at this point, just be reasonable. Yeah, we can have disagreements, but the whole point of sports in a lot of ways is that it certainly is a very unifying force. It can be. I mean, if you could have people on all kinds of different issues in the world, but if you both are rooting for the same sports team, all of a sudden it gets really light and happy, and you guys can both do that. And say what you want to. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, but this whole national anthem and taking the NFL and reducing it to basically some sort of weird, protest that doesn't even make a difference when we're talking about these athletes that are making millions of dollars. It's just so hypocritical, doesn't make any sense. Anyway, back to this. So Dwayne Dak Keese, he took the oath of office as the United States Attorney for the Western District of Arkansas on Friday. It was the investiture ceremony. There were 4 federal court judges there. Western Arkansas Chief U.S. District Judge P.K. Holmes III administered the oath to Keese before an audience of about 200 that included Senator John Boozman, who put forward Keese's name for the position to President Donald Trump, and Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, a former U.S. Attorney for the Western District. Senator Boozman is quoted in the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette as saying, quote, "He wanted to be of service. I think that summed him up." Also there, during the ceremony, U.S. District Judge Timothy L. Brooks, Barry A. Bryant, U.S. Bankruptcy Judge Ben T. Berry, Walmart Vice President Tom Geen, also a former U.S. Attorney for the Western District, was Master of Ceremonies. Keese, 43, was nominated by Trump on September 28th and confirmed by the U.S. Senate on December 20th. He was initially sworn into office January 5th. Quote, "There is no greater privilege than to stand in the well of the court and say you represent the United States," Holmes said of being U.S. Attorney. Holmes served as U.S. Attorney for Western District of Arkansas during the Clinton administration. Keese said becoming the U.S. Attorney for the Western District was his dream job and that his love for the district came from experiencing many parts of it. Quote, "I am a son of the Western District," he said. "The Western District is not a geographic or some type of jurisdictional entity. It is home." Keese said he met Governor Hutchinson while working for the Asa Hutchinson Law Group in Rogers from 2009 to 2013 and considered him to be a mentor. Governor Hutchinson said it was unique. It was a unique honor to serve as a U.S. Attorney to represent the United States, and he believed Dak Keese would do a good job. Quote, "He is a zealous advocate, and that's what it takes," end quote. Okay, so why am I bringing you this story? Well, first of all, Governor, a zealous advocate for what? Obviously, I know you mean justice, but still, excuse me if I'm a little skeptical. And over the last couple of weeks, as we've been going over the corruption in the headlines, I have been asking the U.S. attorneys to help restore confidence in our government by cracking down on this corruption. I mean, we have senators. We have one senator now that's implicated who is in the Western District. We've got another one who's been implicated, and it's like a reoccurring Marvel character in the Eastern District. And I guess I would just say this. It's time to restore. It is obvious to me that there are people in positions of power or former individuals who need to be indicted. I mean, it is obvious that there is a there, and the people have no confidence in their government. We have a corruption scandal that has gotten a little bit of mainstream media attention. I mean, you have people pleading guilty left and right. You have people being found guilty. You have people trying to pay for a hitman to go kill a witness in New Jersey. You have Rusty Cranford, who really seems to be the linchpin. He's the connector with all of this. His guilty plea that insinuates or claims that Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, the governor's nephew, took $500,000 in bribes. Of course, as attorneys, these people want to say, well, no, I'm an attorney, and this is legal because this was just legal fees. There's nothing illegal about what was done here. I will remind you that according to Conduit News sources in the court case against John Woods, or in the case against John Woods, the federal government argued that claiming that these are just attorney's fees is not a legitimate defense. There may be an Arkansas loophole in the Arkansas law, but the feds want to actually get, they think they can get a conviction out of this. I'm not suggesting anything. All I'm saying is, with respect to Cody Highland and Dak Keys, the people of Arkansas are counting on you. Not the 200 people, and I'll be honest, let's just say that not the 200 elites that were there during the ceremony, and that's great. I'm sure there are some great people there that were there during the investiture ceremony. The people of Arkansas, though, the voters that are seeing the government, warts in all, daily, and we're seeing how these people have taken advantage of the public trust. They've been elected, they've been getting our money, and they've gone down there and carved a financial niche. These lobbyists that have carved a financial niche, are there going to be any more lobbyists ensnared in this thing? We need the confidence. We need it to be restored in our government, and the only way for that to happen is it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what your name is, doesn't matter who your associations are with. If you have done something that is broken the law, and you've been in a public office or you are in public office, then doesn't that mean even more the fact that you were in the public office? Doesn't it because you're not just defrauding this person or that person. If you were to say just do this when you weren't in public office, you're defrauding the people, and you're making a mockery of the system. We have to have confidence in our government. There are other people that are watching who are already in office who probably have tendencies to try to take a little off the top. They need to be reminded that this is what happens. And some little Senate rules, little ethics, reform in the Senate and the rules, that's not going to cut it. I mean, I'm glad they're making the effort. I honestly am. They're admitting that there's a problem, even though in the press conference they said this had nothing to do with Milton Rusty Russell Cranford's guilty plea. This had nothing to do with that. We have the governor's nephew implicated in taking $500,000 in bribes. The next week we have a press conference about ethics reform. We get asked point blank by the press, is this because of Jeremy Hutchinson? And people up there deny it. I mean, that in and of itself says that these prosecutors, I hope that these prosecutors will restore our confidence in our government. That's all. I think many of you out there want that to happen as well. Folks, we're going to take a break and be back here in just a minute. The phone number, 870-275-9799. Going to reset when we come back. Let's talk about how the Secretary of State has objected to a satanic temple's role in a lawsuit talking about the Ten Commandments on the Capitol grounds. We'll be back in just a moment. They can't do that. I've never thought of it before, but you're exactly right. That really would. And, it makes sense, Trevor, because Congress has such a terrible approval rating, and yet, we reelect. Well, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a very, very high percentage every 2 years.
95%, 95%.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. And it makes our political discourse stagnant. You can't have people come in and shake it up. And when you do have people come and shake it up, it's people like Donald Trump or Ross Perot back in the day who are wealthy, who can spend their own money on their campaign, but they can't give that money to someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, and certainly Donald Trump, President Trump, it definitely makes your point, because he is, if anything, I mean, say what you want, he is anti-status quo. He has shaken things up. I mean, the Republican establishment will now actually, disagree with the president now. You know what I mean? You used to never see that. He's obviously the Democrats can't stand him, but I mean, I think what he's doing is fantastic personally. But that.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst. How are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so the Ten Commandments monument is up on the Capitol grounds. I'm pretty thankful for it. I think it's, number one, it's, I don't know, they're just, first of all, the Ten Commandments, if you just want to look at it from a secular point of view, which is not the way I look at it, but you can just talk about it from a historical standpoint. You could certainly make the connections between the Ten Commandments, the things that you're supposed to do or not do, and what happens when you break the commandments. Most of the time, you end up in a courtroom. And that's why the Ten Commandments are still on the United States Supreme Court building. You know, they're ordering them to be taken down across the country. They're also there's also the concept of, well, when you make laws, you try to make laws in the spirit of Western civilization and the Golden Rule. But, of course, there are people that believe there's some joggers and some bikers, and they like to exercise in a route that goes by the Capitol. And they have filed a lawsuit, and they have said that they're offended, that now they have to, every day, every morning when they walk or ride or whatever by the Ten Commandments, that now they're hurt. Their feelings are hurt. They're offended because they don't subscribe to a Judeo-Christian background. They're atheists, and they don't think that the government should be promoting the Ten Commandments, because that's promoting a religion, and it's promoting a religion over their unbelief. And of course, unbelief is not a worldview. There's no way that someone's unbelief realized in public policy would ever do the exact same thing they claim is being done to them by Christian or Judeo-Christian beliefs, symbols, historical documents like the Ten Commandments. It's huge. Their argument falls in on itself, and it only works if you assume that secularism or atheism is not a worldview in itself that can do the same thing that supposed Christian beliefs can do to others. What it really says is that the concept of separation in church of state, as we know it today, has been perverted by the courts, and that there has been no law made respecting the establishment of a religion. Just because there's a Ten Commandments monument, that does not mean a religious edict has gone out making everybody Christians or making everybody Jewish. That hasn't happened. Congress has not passed a law to do that. And so, we now have the Satanic Temple. The Satanic Temple has now been added on to this lawsuit from these people who had their morning routines just utterly devastated. I was thinking on the ride in today, as, there are fellow Arkansans who are Democrats or who are liberals, who are progressives. And I was thinking to myself, wow, they must really, I wonder if they ever stop and take note of how much smarter they must believe they are than everybody else around them. Anyway, Secretary of State Mark Martin, through his attorney, is essentially saying this is, this is not legitimate. The Satanic Temple has no business being put on this lawsuit. Martin and the original group of plaintiffs complained that the Satanic Temple doesn't satisfy federal requirements for intervention. Martin, through Solicitor General Nicholas Brony of the Arkansas Attorney General's office, also said the proposed inventor's conduct is beneath the dignity of this court. In objecting to the proposed intervention, Martin called members of the Satanic Temple a notoriously transparent front for trolling pranksters who use fake and ambiguous names. I think they're talking about one of the guys' name is Lucian. That's not his real name. Let's see, it keeps going. Even if the Satanic Temple is an organized religion, the attorney solicitor general here argued the Satanic Temple isn't a proper plaintiff because a lawsuit cannot be filed in the name of an organized religion such as Roman Catholicism or Buddhism. That's a good argument. In his response, in opposition, Brony attached a copy of a July 2015 article in the New York Times titled "A Mischievous Thorn in the Side of Conservative Christianity." The article quotes two men who say they co-founded the Satanic Temple and acknowledge that the names they use, Lucian Greaves and Malcolm Jerry, are pseudonyms. The article said each of the men described himself as an atheistic Satanist, meaning that, quote, he no more believes in a literal Satan than he does a literal God. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm an atheistic Satanist. Oh, man, an atheistic Satanist. Isn't that a Satanist? No, seriously, an atheistic Satanist is a Satanist. Am I the only one? I mean, do we know? Right? Oh, my goodness. Oh, by the way, I don't think Satan cares one way or the other. Because yeah, exactly. Right. No, that's what my point is. That's what I'm saying, Joe. I think it's interesting. An atheistic Satanist. So you're saying a Satanist, basically. Well, I mean, the difference would be slightly, there is no God versus you may exist, but you have no authority over me, and I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to prove that you're a liar. Of course, Satan fails at that regularly. Anyway, we're going to take a break. Let me know what you think about this. Now, this does have some implications here in terms of the Baphomet statue. You see, that's what they claim that they want. Now, whether or not they actually have the money, some of these groups, they are all talk, they don't actually have the money to see this through, but their contention is, if you have the Ten Commandments statue on the Capitol grounds, then we want the half goat, half man, half woman Baphomet statue right there next to it. And that is not going to happen. Back in a minute. Welcome back. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for being with us. Folks, welcome to the program. We have Mr. Trevor Burrus on the line. Trevor is a Cato Institute scholar. He is a research fellow in the Cato Institute's Robert A. Levy Center for Constitutional Studies and the Center for the Study of Science, as well as managing editor for the Cato Supreme Court Review. His research interests include constitutional law, civil and criminal law, legal and political philosophy, legal history, and the interface between science and public policy. Please welcome Mr. Trevor Burrus. Trevor, it's great to meet you and have you on the program, sir.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to have you on. I wanted to talk a little bit about this new guidance that the federal government is giving about nonprofits. You know, the New York Times, they call it dark money, that the U.S. is easing this dark money rule. What do you know about it?
Well, it's the greatest political salesmanship that I've ever seen. Just the term dark money, the people on the left really won some rhetorical points by naming this thing that no one really knows what it is, dark money. Generally, when we're talking about dark money, we're talking about a thing called a 501c4. So at Cato, where I work, we're a 501c3. We're an educational institution. We're not allowed to talk about, advocate for political candidates or for bills to be voted on or passed. But 501c4s are a variety of nonprofit organizations that can do a lot of some political advocacy and some education. They just can't be their primary purpose, cannot be political advocacy. And different groups can give to those, different corporations can give to them, people can give to them. Some people can give to them for the purpose of political advocacy. So in 2014, the Obama administration said that those organizations' IRS forms, they had to report those donors to the IRS, which the IRS was not going to make public or anything. It was just this sort of onerous, unnecessary burden on these organizations. And what happened last week was that they simply said, you don't have to do that anymore. And they're talking about 2.9% of political spending. Everyone tries to convince you that dark money, quote unquote, is a huge part of political spending. It's almost nothing. And it's just the left's continued war on political speech that it doesn't like.
I think you're exactly right. It's political speech they don't like. There's also some First Amendment applications here, right? I mean, shouldn't I have the ability to associate with who I want to associate with, and I should be able to give them money without having to report that to the government? I think that when you have to report it to the government, it makes you vulnerable for reprisals. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And on many levels, that's exactly what the left wants. They want to be able to get this information out there. And again, I want to point out the real irony of this. The organizations were required to give this information to the IRS, but the IRS was not allowed to publish it. So it was.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, here we are. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being with us. Good morning to you. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. So, folks, we've been talking a little bit this morning about President Donald Trump. He wants to get that border wall funding, and he's threatening to shut down the government to do it. We also have been mentioning that 5 days ago you have the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. He was basically he pardoned some illegal immigrants who are criminals. I want to introduce you to Maria Espinoza. Maria Espinoza is the national director of the Remembrance Project, which honors and remembers Americans and legal residents who have been killed by illegal aliens. Maria, welcome to Conduit News.
Good morning, Paul. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Will you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you became the national director of the Remembrance Project?
Right. Well, my background starts here in Texas when my father was born in Mexico and came here the right way. We all encourage these nationals to do, and not sneak it in the back door. And my husband Tim Ling and I started the Remembrance Project in 2009 here in Houston, Texas, after seeing an interview, or a report, of Officer Henry Canales, who was shot and killed by an illegal alien during the sting operation. And within that report, they also mentioned that there was another police officer who had been killed by another illegal alien, shot 4 or 5 times in the back of the head, and his name was Rodney Johnson. You might recall his name. Officer Johnson's widow filed a lawsuit against the city, and that's what intrigued me. I'm a former legal assistant, and I thought what warranted a lawsuit when there was an in-line of duty death, as tragic as it is, Paul, there was something that went wrong in this case, and that's where we learned about sanctuary city policies. We had never heard of them before. I took it, very personal in the fact that illegal aliens were basically untouchable. Laws are for citizens, apparently, only, and that the city of Houston is protecting illegal aliens. So we went to work and talked to elected officials. First of all, they denied this sanctuary city policy even existed, and denied that illegal aliens, that many, were here. But through our research, my husband, Tim Ling, researched Texas killings by illegal aliens. Of course, they call them immigrants, so you have to be, get that right in your search. He expanded his search to the other states and found that there was an epidemic of killings by illegal aliens. So, we approached the elected officials with our information, denied it, lied to us, and then, eventually really just shutting us out. So we created the Stolen Lives Quilt. This is a visual memorial to the victims killed in all preventable killings, Paul. So here we are, found ourselves right in the middle of a very hot topic, and Donald Trump, when he first announced, reached out to us and wanted to highlight the cases, and we said absolutely. He's the only person who has ever embraced the Remembrance Project and the angel families, and said that he was going to do something about it. And he is trying. He created the Office of Voice, Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement, last year. We just celebrated the 1-year anniversary as a promise to the Remembrance Project that he would do more for the families.
Yeah, I remember him making that announcement. I thought that was a really bold move. He does a great job when it comes to, just like any president can do, using the bully pulpit to bring to the attention of the American people issues that a lot of us don't know about. And this is something that has been overlooked. I think, though, when you look at the international backdrop right now, you look at the immigration issues that are going on in Europe, and you look at what's happening, and when it comes to the increase in crime there, the increase in killings, the increase in sexual assault, and yet, here in the United States, this has been happening in the United States a lot longer than this, migration situation, that's been going on in Europe, within reason. Obviously, the London, that they've been having that go on for a while as well. So, how do we get the news out there even more, Maria? What are your thoughts on that?
We keep talking. That's why, I'm had over probably 300 interviews since the first of the year, and we just keep talking about it and, sharing the information and making people listen, because this is the only way we're going to be able to educate the masses. As you know, President Trump is up against the fake news. They don't give us any time and absolutely no ink. And if they do, it's very edited, and, we're out to be the villains. And here are, tens of thousands of Americans being killed and permanently separated from their loved ones. But where is the outcry for our families right here on our own soil? I believe there was a Breitbart article where there were 129, I believe. I'm a little bit foggy. I'm getting over a cold, Paul, versus one story about Americans killed by illegal aliens compared to the many, many stories of the illegal alien and what's going on with them. They have these stories and separation of children, and here our children are permanently separated from our loved ones. And yet, remember that if an American breaks the law, they get charged and convicted, they go to jail. And whether they have a child at home or not, so it's okay to separate Americans from their families, but it's not okay to separate illegal aliens who, number one, put themselves in that situation knowingly, and then, of course, the outcry is for them. It's completely backwards right now.
Yeah, it really seems you can see their long game kind of coming to fruition here when it comes to how they've changed the definitions of words. It used to be illegal alien, then it was illegal immigrant, now it's undocumented immigrant. And so this concept, Maria, that what they've done here is they're basically saying that it's not a crime. So, it's obvious that if I'm driving with my daughter and I do something in the car that's illegal and I need to be taken to jail, it's obvious my daughter's not going to come with me to jail. They're going to separate us, right? Because it's a crime.
Absolutely.
So they've they're trying to win this battle of words, redefining what things mean. And so what they're saying is, you know what? It's not a crime to come here illegally.
Absolutely. And what that's doing is, of course, with the open borders, erasing our borders. We are not a country without our borders, and shredding our Constitution. But all these playing around with laws, and California has done this as well, of course, and Massachusetts, Maryland, and where they are fundamentally undermining the basis for any laws to be obeyed. And that's a very dangerous slope right now. So, we can pick and choose which laws we want to enforce upon the illegal alien. And now we're letting them get away with it. And then now you see what Governor Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, did, giving himself issuing an executive order, giving himself authority to be able to pardon these ex-cons so now that they can vote. So he's allowed 35,000 felons to vote now. So, Paul, what are we becoming? We're becoming a lawless nation with chaos and mayhem. And the rest of us are standing around going, what has happened to my America? But if we don't, get active, and I encourage every one of your listeners, we've seen what two people, and my husband and myself, have done, and totally just, I can't tell you, we were just moved, Paul, to do this and to keep on. And I'm 100% volunteer. I put my small company on hold. My husband was a professional engineer, certainly not independently wealthy. He made a good living. But now here we are, using our retirement to try to save this country. I cannot have a small business like my parents had if I don't have a country, Paul, and that's what it's coming down to.
Wow. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think a lot of people feel that way, and I appreciate you sacrificing to promote this cause. We're talking with Maria Espinoza. She's the director of the Remembrance Project. You can find out more at theremembranceproject.org. You used the phrase, Maria, earlier, preventable deaths. That's the whole point here. These deaths are preventable if we had an immigration policy that made sense. President Trump tweeted recently, it's in the news, all of the morning headlines, he's willing to shut down the government if he doesn't get funding for the wall. So a couple questions here, Maria. Do you think that a wall is going to help decrease, illegal immigration? Let's just start there.
Absolutely. Walls work. Our doors work. We all lock our doors, our cars. We need a wall, and it would prevent these illegal aliens from easily crossing over. There is no way our agents can control that border right now. I've been along that border. I've been on night watches. Watching these illegal aliens with backpacks loaded with drugs coming across, and I was 60 miles north of our border. So absolutely, it's due the American public. 40 years we've been waiting for this, and these politicians know exactly what they're doing. They don't want that security because they are owned, Paul, by these open borders groups who shell out a lot of money for their reelection campaigns. I say they fill their coffers with this blood money, while American children are filling coffins.
Yeah, I was reading a story today about the Koch brothers, matter of fact, and how they had they had a conference call with some of their donors, and they were saying that they might support Democrats if the Democrats will oppose the tariffs that President Trump is on, but also they also reported it. Look, we don't want the type of border security. At least that was the Breitbart article I was reading. We want this to continue, because right now, let's just talk about this, Maria. If we have a decrease in illegal immigration, we're going to have wages rise eventually. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I know individuals who owned small companies. Mom and pop shops, Paul. This is what we're talking about. And they cannot compete with another company that illegally hires these illegal aliens. And because, look, the standard of living is totally different. We live here. These illegal aliens, for now, are 10 men in an apartment. So, yes, they can make, $2 an hour and survive just fine. And they send their money back home. As we know, the dollar is much stronger in Mexico. So our mom and pop shops, like my parents had, eventually, are going out of business. And there are no jobs that can sustain Americans if this continues.
So the first question was, do you think a border wall is going to stop illegal immigration? You said yes. What about shutting down the government? What do you think? You think it's time to stare down across the aisle and say, hey, listen, this is what I was elected to do, and you guys need to fund it?
Well, I think they're doing a poor job anyway. They're supposed to be having these budgets, 12 different budgets. No, they're throwing everything in one lump together so that we're forced. They're trying to force the American people to accept this, and we have with this omnibus bill and all that's going on. But take a look. You ask these families whose loved ones are 6 feet under, never to see them again, and all the turmoil that they've had to go through, where they're not getting calls. They want to know why this illegal alien who was 4 or 5, even 10 times deported, or spent time in jail and was released and remained in our country to have access to their loved one. Mm-hmm. You ask them, what's it worth to you? I say yes, shut down the government. That is because we've had it. They can't hold us, threaten us any longer as we're watching our country be ruined. I would rather them just go home and have them work on enforcing existing laws. We don't need any new ones where they're creating loopholes, Paul, to be able to get those funding from the open borders groups. And those open border groups, they're owned by people who are pretty well off, and they're not living where we live.
You mentioned at the beginning of the interview, Maria, that you got started, you and your husband, by trying to fight the sanctuary policies of Houston, Texas. Now, for all of our listeners across the state of Arkansas, that may be a little surprising to us because we kind of look at Texas a little differently. But I do know Houston, the city of Houston, has some strange policies. I remember a story a long time ago about how they made it illegal to feed the homeless, I think, off the top of my head. But so tell us, though, is Houston still a sanctuary city, in your opinion?
In my opinion, yes. However, because, and this happened in the last few years, because they cooperate with the federal government on other matters, they do not consider themselves a sanctuary city. So, for me, either you enforce and collaborate with the federal government on every aspect, or you don't. And they can't, again, pick and choose which laws that they want to enforce and abide by. And unfortunately, that these elected officials have immunity when it comes to being held accountable should there be a casualty because of their policies. That's very unfortunate, but I think that, and it's been tried in trying to go after these individuals, and there's a discretionary function, qualified immunity, and I think that what these sanctuary city mayors and governors are doing, especially with the sanctuary city policies, I feel that their qualified immunity should not apply. So I think that they should be held accountable and prosecuted. There are very stiff laws in the code.
Yeah, and that may be what President Trump and the executive branch have to do before it's all said and done. And it's reminiscent of when President Reagan had a standoff with the air traffic controllers who went on strike, and eventually he just had to say, okay, you're gone, I'll bring in the military, and they'll do your job. And, you just got fired. And there are people that, I've talked to people that are my age whose parents were, they were air traffic controllers, and then they lost their job. That it may be a similar situation, but even higher stakes when Donald Trump eventually is going to have to deal with cities here who are just blatantly ignoring and enabling these preventable deaths that the Remembrance Project is all about. And Maria, I'll give you the last word.
Okay, and there are many other crimes too, Paul. Really quick, for instance, over 600,000 crimes were committed against Texans alone. So there's many other crimes that this is attached to. But I want to thank you and keep up the good work, Paul. Continue spreading the word. And I ask for your listeners to go to our website, theremembranceproject.org, sign up for emails. And if you can afford anything, just please make a donation. We're going to come create more Stolen Lives quilt banners and send those out to all over the United States. So we need help.
Maria Espinoza, I appreciate it so much. It's great to meet you. I'd love to do this again sometime.
Absolutely, Paul. God bless you.
All righty.
Keep praying for our president and our country.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Maria Espinoza, everybody, the director of the Remembrance Project. Go there now, theremembranceproject.org, theremembranceproject.org. Check them out, and we're going to take a break. Good morning to you. Back in just a moment.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triplrpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triplrpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triplrpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Welcome back. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for being with us. Folks, welcome to the program. We have Mr. Trevor Burrus on the line. Trevor is a Cato Institute scholar. He is a research fellow in the Cato Institute's Robert A. Levy Center for Constitutional Studies and the Center for the Study of Science, as well as managing editor for the Cato Supreme Court Review. His research interests include constitutional law, civil and criminal law, legal and political philosophy, legal history, and the interface between science and public policy. Please welcome Mr. Trevor Burrus. Trevor, it's great to meet you and have you on the program, sir.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to have you on. I wanted to talk a little bit about this new guidance that the federal government is giving about nonprofits the New York Times, they call it dark money, that the U.S. is easing this dark money rule. What do you know about it?
Well, it's the greatest political salesmanship.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back. Have this July 28th piece from Michael Wickline, the Northwest Arkansas Democrat. Is that the state of Arkansas to reap $35 million in taxes, online sales called Untapped Load. Back when they wanted to raise your taxes and make out-of-state sellers pay for sales taxes in Arkansas, they said, they promised that there was all this talk. Well, if we get this much revenue, whatever it is, we promise we will decrease, the exact same. We promise. Now, my criticism was, first of all, it's a new tax. It's more money coming out of the pocket, number one. Number two, I really didn't trust them that they would grow government now and we'll shrink it later. Trust us. We'll shrink it later. You see, I think that the thirst for more of our money from our state politicians is insatiable. I don't think it's quenchable. I think the type of people we have in there, they want more money. They think that they're entitled to that money. And I know they have a task force they're trying to make this revenue neutral. That's what they want. But what's the definition of revenue neutral? To them, the definition of revenue neutral might be more money going to the government than going to its now. What's the definition of a tax cut, though? What's the definition of an actual tax cut? It means less money going to the government after your bill passes. And that's not going to be what it is, but they're going to say that this is a tax cut. They're going to say that this is tax cuts and tax reform. But there's going to be a group over here that has to pay more while a group over here pays less. We need the burden. Just to reiterate, the state of Arkansas has a tax burden on its people. We need that burden to decrease. We don't need it to decrease here and increase here so that the burden is the same. We need a complete a decrease of the burden across the board. And that means less money going to the government. Here's the thing. We don't have any money, though. We don't have any money. They have no choice, right? They don't believe in dynamic scoring in the sense that, well, I think they have talked about some dynamic scoring, which is a good thing instead of static scoring. But you have to understand that if the government gets less money, that makes everybody nervous. They say, we don't have the money to pay for it because they don't believe that more money into the hands of small business owners, into the people who actually pay taxes, are going to spurn economic growth, growing your business, more economic activity, more the buying and selling of more goods, which means more tax revenue. There's some people that talk about it on a campaign trail, but they don't really believe it. They certainly don't want to risk it. It's never been tried. When's it been tried before in the state of Arkansas? Not often. One story we didn't get to today, ladies and gentlemen, was this of the Ethics Commission ruling that a Bentonville mother who's running for the state legislature may use campaign funds for certain child care expenses while she's out seeking votes, according to the Arkansas Ethics Commission. It was a 4-0 vote of the commission. Why not just pay somebody a salary? Why not be able to just make a salary while you're running for office? Gayatri Agnew. Gayatri Agnew is a Democrat running in House District 93. It comes at a time when dozens of women are running in contested state and federal races in Arkansas. Now, why are women running in Arkansas? Well, it's because of Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, if you're a Democrat. Well, I'm just saying, it's the pink hats. Do you not remember? It's the pink hats. People, they're watching CNN, and they say, well, I've got to get involved. Donald Trump, he's a misogynist. Of course, that's why so many women are running. I don't think that everybody knows that. It's the hats that I can't make heads or tails of. I was talking to Joe. I don't know. I know what they claim that they are, but I'm just extremely confused. Is it like one of those paintings where you have to stare at? Yeah, what's it called? Okay, all right. Anyway, folks, have a great Monday. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Arkansas, be safe.